This podcast is based around the history and experiences of the infamous Shane Bugbee, recollected and retold by Shane Bugbee himself. Who is Shane? Well, you're about to find out. I'm your host, Nannerl, and this is Speak of the Devil.
I'm Nannerl, and I'm a... It's time to speak of the devil. As always, I'm here with the elusive and total Shane Bugbee, and today we're going to talk a little bit about and how I'm a... And when we went to the... and ate a bunch of... and then these showed up, and then we... all the way to the bank.
The talk of censorship is near and dear to my heart, so I'm happy. I'm stoked about talking about this.
Oh, me too. And I feel like it's one of those things that it's definitely evolved with time. And what we see as censorship now compared to 20, 30 years ago is definitely something different. So what I'm hoping today we could discuss is a little bit of what censorship meant to you way back when, what it meant for me, and what it means now. Sound good?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Alrighty. So one of the things that come to mind when it comes to censorship is the Parents Music Resource Center, also known as the PMRC. I was a little young to remember a lot of this. I remember Dee Snider sitting at a microphone, but that's all I remember about it. So, please, indulge.
Oh, yeah. Give me a second here.
Once upon a time, there were four white women, and they were known as the Washington Wives. They were total... and they included Tipper Gore, Susan Baker, Pan Howard, and Sally Nevius. Nevius. And they shut down in the mid to late 90s, but when they were their squad, they tried their best to condemn what was known as the Filthy 15. These albums included, these songs included Prince's Darling Nikki, Sheena Easton's Sugar Walls, Judas Priest's Eat Me Alive, Vanity's Strap On, as well as Robbie Baby, Motley Crue's Bastard, AC/DC, Let Me Put My Love Into You, Twisted Sisters' We're Not Gonna Take It, Madonna's Dress You Up, Wasp's Animal, also known as Fuck Like a Beast, Def Leppard's High and Dry, Merciful Fate's Into the Coven, Black Sabbath, Trashed, Mary Jane Girls, In My House, Venom's Possessed, and Cyndi Lauper's She Bop.
The PMRC hearings were amazing to be able to experience and watch up close. This all started, that record label, it started with a band called Two Live Crew, and it was a rap band, a hip-hop band, Luther Campbell and Two Live Crew. And that became big because it was like porno rap. That's what they called it then, porno rap. But they're just talking about their life experience, going to a strip club. When you're underground, when you're street, when you're counterculture, it's almost like you're an outlaw artist. And so you're dealing with strip clubs and sex work and all this stuff. For them to sing this in their songs is just documenting their culture. And the culture of underground is what I'm saying, not black culture exclusively, but outlaw culture. And so when they labeled it like that, I was just so shocked. And I remember going to a record store trying to buy that, and they're like, oh, it's behind the counter. And I was just so blown away by that. And that's where I learned what a precedent, like the precedent setting. I heard this talk. This is going to set a dangerous precedent. And it certainly did. It trickled down into when you finally heard PMRC, when the PMRC hearings happened in Washington, I don't remember one person of color being there. It was Frank Zappa, It was Dee Snider from Twisted Sister. There was a real deep disinformation going on about race. And so a lot of white people were afraid of black people or people of color in general. There was no connection. We didn't live next to each other. We didn't see each other, and we didn't see each other online on the internet. Well, I remember sitting in a suburb watching this on TV, just being horrified. And like I'd mentioned, I remember listening to my little brother scream and thinking the free speech was like essential to the growth of the human species. But the memories are just like that precedent-setting moment, watching it all devolve after that. Like labels became frequent, and it stopped being what they meant it to be, and it was just a marketing thing. Every band, everyone wanted a sticker because Two Live Crew sold millions of records once they were banned or put behind the counter. Everyone wanted it. And I guess that was the bigger lesson I learned, was like, wow, controversy sells. People would rather have something that's controversial than something that's of quality. And so that's where the shock jock nation started. We had I had Steve Dahl, Disco Sucks in Chicago. It grew into Howard Stern, and Howard Stern influenced Donald Trump and his shock politics. So it all comes out of this record stickering thing, if you ask me. It goes from record stickering to like, oh my goodness, we're going to put a scarlet letter on this stuff, to growing into this marketing thing. But the marketing usually worked in my day strictly for metal bands. Hip hop artists. Yeah, it was used to segregate music. Now that switched a little bit as things went on, and the hip hop artists did get more distribution and street music. And I'm talking not just, I shouldn't just say hip hop artists, but satanic art, underground, all outlaw art. So we're talking satanic, we're talking people of color. All of that stuff was put in the margins, and through stickering, it helped distribute that stuff into a wide distribution network. So it really worked against them. But as you can hear from your list, it's women, it's people of color, and it's Satanism, or those are the people that are being pushed into the margins.
Oh yeah, and like the fact that it's such a handful of artists that I do not think of as obscene in 2019. It's interesting that it didn't even really delve into much. It is misinformation, as you said. And it's interesting because it sort of reminds me of nowadays with Facebook and other social networking, and even with email chains. There's so much disinformation and, sort of fake news, viral news that's manufactured and then spread like wildfire. And it sounds so good because it feeds into what people want to hear. People want to be mad at something, or they just want to disapprove of something. And it feeds into that feeling of disapproval, that wish to silence something.
It definitely strikes at something deep within us. It's a divisive thing. And I'm not sure, I don't know if people want to be angry at each other. I wonder about that. I think that we are pushed into things and it becomes divisive. Ignorance is at hand with censorship. When people talk of, well, this person shouldn't be allowed to say that. This person shouldn't be allowed to say this. That shouldn't be allowed. That's triggering me. And I think safe areas are very important to people, and I respect that. But I'm a person who gets triggered easily. I have anger issues. People can poke the stick at me and I can easily go off. But I can't see a world where we stop people from doing that without stopping ourselves from expressing ourselves. And speech is just a sliver of free thought. Like I've said before, like the transgender movement is the greatest example of free expression. To say I identify as a female and you're born a male, but to be able to say that is just an amazing part of expression, like to go that deep within yourself and to realize that about yourself, and then to come out and say that in knowing you're putting yourself in peril. My goodness, how people can't see the nobility in that.
Yes, and we could even push that even further into the term non-binary. You have very,
absolutely.
very androgynous personalities now that you see on Instagram, YouTube, even on TV, that it sort of was touched upon in the 80s, but now it must be very refreshing for people from the older generation of non-binary androgyny to see this and see how liberated it is. It's so free now compared to 20 years ago.
That's such a new concept. I'm not sure most people even understand it. That's why the transgender stuff is on the front line. The non-binary thing is very progressive, West Coast progressive. I don't think people in the Midwest even understand what the hell that is. I do. But yeah, wow, that is a hell of an expression.
Actually, I was thinking about just now how in the 90s, after this tipper sticker was passed all over the place, how there was so much of a focus upon violence. And it's interesting how even that over time has sort of evolved. And we have the same people who have always been conservative. They want certain things censored, but they're very passionate about, say, their rights.
Yeah. Well, back in the day, like when you said, like, none of this stuff, you like you say, today I don't consider any of that stuff obscene. Neither did anyone else. No one considered it.
Do you think it was just over-concerned suburban parents?
I think it was more politics. It was more political shit. It was like, we want to bring this up to be righteous. We want to bring this up as a sales pitch to get votes. Because no one even realized what Venom or Merciful Fate was. It was so small and underground. Luther Campbell and Two Live Crew, they were selling records out of the trunk of their car. They weren't selling millions of records. So it was like, it's a 0-1 dynamic. Without Christianity, there is no Satanism. Without Satan, there is no Christianity. Without these controversies, there is no politician. Without the divisive issues, there's no reason for a politician to exist. We could have administrators do the job of a person filling potholes and taking tax dollars and then spending it to fill potholes. We don't need politicians to go out and sell us divide issues. But they do, and they create new ones all the fucking time. And that's what this was them creating a new divisive issue. Or they go back to the old ones like abortion. Like, let's just keep that one alive. How the fuck is that even a subject now? It's like, wow, what the fuck?
It's interesting you mention about, getting those votes in, because it does pander to, I think of that time period. I think of Bush the elder, and after him the Clinton years, and there was a lot of push for morality, American values. So many organizations started out during that time period, like MAD and American Families Association, and these other kind of sects of censorship that went along with political lobby, and it definitely pandered to America in the same way that our more recent election pandered to a very specific niche of America.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought up fake news a little bit a couple of moments ago.
Yes.
And that's such an interesting concept, the idea of fake news. But it's just a trigger word to me. There's no such thing as fake news. What there is?
No, it's just a buzzword that freaks people out, isn't
right,
it?
It's just right. It's this word, people apply meaning to it, but there's no such thing as a fake news. There's only such thing as lazy research.
Misinformation.
Yeah, if you're the consumer and you're taking in information and you just believe it religiously, you're the fool.
Mm-hmm.
But when I hear something, I'm like, the internet has given me the privilege to search a topic out to no end. I can really resource things. I can go, let me research this. Let me research this. Let me go to this resource. And I can find a pretty decent truth between right and left wing people debating. And so I don't understand what the concept of fake news is, except that all of this exploits the ignorance of people. And I think it goes down to lack of education, lack of having health care, mental health care, and having access to schooling, you know. But I hate to push my politics as everyone else's with censorship, but that's exactly how I see this. It's just easy to pick on the ignorant masses, the religious-minded masses. I mean, they love religion. I don't know.
Yeah, and you know what? The word fake news for myself, it makes me automatically think of the razor blades and apples myth and other hoaxes from my childhood. Exactly.
Great. That's a great example. That's exactly it. It's like this scare tactics. And that's what sells groups of people is fear. That's how they get together. Like if you're afraid, you get together in a horde. You get together in a pack or a group of people. It's fear. It's not celebration.
Remember the fear of the slat bracelets and these other toys that nobody got hurt from. In fact, the toy I think of people getting hurt from is the most no shit they got hurt one, which is lawn darts. And all these other toys we had, or like, again, trick-or-treating and this misinformation that comes from the 90s of, because of stranger danger, post-latchkey kids, you know, things like that. You have the whole, like, are your children getting drugs in their Halloween candy? Check their candy to make sure they don't have PCP and cocaine. Who the fuck is giving away PCP and cocaine for Halloween?
Yeah. Well, the Halloween thing is, I don't remember all the toys that were recalled for fear tactics, but the Halloween thing was definitely something that is, when I think of it, it's just another, let's keep the donations flowing into the church. Well, how? Well, fear tactics, of course. Yes. You know, that's what I think.
Hallelujah houses and harvest festivals.
Exactly. And that's how the PMRC represented to me, was some Christian right or Christian group of people that were pretending they're Democrats or left wing, the Gores. That's why I fucking hated Al Gore. I hate that guy. Whatever. I don't like that whole morality kind of shit in politics. But maybe it is moral to make sure people are fed. I should say Christian values in politics, not morals.
As a slight disclaimer here, I just wanted to remind our listeners that this is not blanketing all Christians as bad people. And when we are referring to Christian values here, we're referring to the perverted media tactics which were used to fearmonger and sway opinions toward extremely conservative and often misinformed beliefs.
Well, I think religion's a plague on humankind, almost across the board.
It's interesting you say that, and you know, we have a lot of censorship coming from all sorts of places today. It's not just Christian groups, but you have also censorship from the left and the right, where people don't quite understand how to process information they don't agree with, regardless of if it's true or not. You have the Fox News hype, but also on the other side, you have a CNN hype, and then you have farther left and farther right.
Well, my issue with like religion or Christianity in general, or I wouldn't say general, but religion in period is that we're in a science-based era. Religion's not needed anymore, so it is a detriment to our survival. And I'm if you're a religious-minded person subscribing to any belief system, if I were the leader, I would insist that you stop using aspirin and boxes and cool things that engineering and science have brought us. I wouldn't want to censor your beliefs, but I would insist that you live by them to the T. And not force me to live by them. I don't know.
I think that anything out of moderation ends up being quite problematic.
But don't you think that we're in a science era, so we don't need to have this necessarily belief system? We just need to find empirical data, empirical facts, and try to,
I think as a society, yes. However, the individual choice to believe in something, I think that everyone is more than welcome to have that freedom to do so. I think that because they are personal beliefs, that they are only your beliefs, and that I wish that they weren't pushed as hard to others, and it wasn't something discussed, say, at work, at school.
Right.
And I think that it's a very personal practice, and especially when you delve into religions that are culturally rooted and go as far as being a racial identity or a cultural identity, national identity, things that Christianity isn't quite that. But when I'm talking about this, dear listener, I'm thinking of things like Hinduism, Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, Russian Church, Shinto.
I love where you're going with this, because I think everyone has something they want to censor. Everyone has something that goes, no, strike that from the fucking record now. And present day, it's on the left, it's a lot of right. They want to strike the alt-right. They want to strike what they're saying from the record. They don't want to hear it, and they want it stopped. Stopped, not spoken, because it's becoming a large group of people. And when you gather these large groups of people, you have precedent to worry. It starts to become something that can be harmful to the rest of us. So there is something there. There is something there. You asked me how I feel about censorship present day. And I hear the kids say that the alt-right, let's say, my friends, that's racist. And that you should not be saying that. Is there something going on?
No,
I hear
not
something
at all.
moving.
Oh, it's probably me and my sorry ass.
I'm sorry. Because I can't see you. I don't know if you're telling me to stop talking or whatever. So it's like.
Oh, no, not at all.
It's
You're
like
cool.
shuffling shh, as I'm talking.
Oh, that was definitely me. I apologize.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to what I was saying. So it's an interesting thing, like where I'm like, yeah, fuck Christianity, because I was born into that world and I see the damaging effects of it. I would say when you put a disclaimer out there for me and how my feelings are, they're valid. I have been scarred. I have been mutilated based on that religion. I have a circumcision. I hold a lot of hate for Christians and Catholics in general because I'm circumcised. How dare you? How dare you have that in the age of plumbing? Tell me it's for cleanliness issues, and I will say, get rid of all your plumbing. We are in a science and engineering era. We don't need circumcision is abuse. And that's religious based. And so I think that is awful. It's criminal. Children, there should be a right that a baby has not to be physically mutilated until they're of consenting age. But for some reason, religion gets away with that shit. Or I'm not sure which religions do the clitorectomies in other countries, but that stuff's fucked up. That's fucked up, and that's what's in their belief system. So we all hold something we want stricken from the record. And it's an interesting thing to go, well, you have the right to say that, but I also have the right to say I don't like it, or you have the right to say that, and I have the right not to respect that or you for saying that. And so how do we move along? How do we move along as a society and let everyone have their say, even though what they're saying is practically criminal? Or like when people say, hey, Nazis don't have a right to say shit because they want to destroy my friends. They want them dead. And I go, wow, that's an interesting concept. You're right. It goes from beyond an idea to a call for action, and a harmful call for action at that. Well, how does religion get away with that? How does certain religions get away where they actually maim children, get away with that concept, but the Nazis can't, the alt-right can't. But everyone there is going to circumcise their children and tell me how Nazis are going to hurt my friends or hurt me when they get in charge. And I agree. The alt-right is off the hinges and hate-filled. But I don't see much difference in religion. Most churches on native reservations have babies underneath them. Religion's not a nice thing. The Christian Crusades did a whole hell of a lot of killing. An individual concept or purely a right for an individual. Once people start getting into a group or an organized religion or an organized political group, that's when I can see there being some sort of repercussions for their hateful speech, especially when it's directed at people, directed at groups of people, directed at children, whatever it is. It becomes. I don't know if I would say that groups, when you become a group, your speech should be regulated. There's a decorum that we have in a society. And you're right, an individual that's 18 years old has a right to scream out about his hate. And I would wish that they would. If they repress it, it comes out in really gross, violent ways. I wish they would make artwork and zines and profess their hate all they want. But when they get together in a group and this group of people starts growing, it becomes dangerous. And there's like proof of that. And so there's where, for me, I don't see any reason, I don't see it being reasonable to let a group continue to move forward and want to eliminate the Japanese people, let's say. It's like, yeah, you're not going to move forward on that. You're not just one person babbling on the corner anymore. That one person babbling on the corner has now grown 10, 20, 100. And it's like, okay, it's time to stop this. And so there's that. How do you move that stuff before they become hate-filled? Like a Dylan Roof. They bring this kid up all the time. And I don't know anything about him. I wish I did. But I can't look into that stuff anymore without being upset. I just wondered, did that kid have access to schooling?
I think the person was quite ignorant.
Right. And I hold us at blame as a greedy society for a lot of this violence that happens, but it's not speech. It's the lack of resources shared with people who might want to explore ugly philosophies in college. That's the place they should be exploring that stuff.
I think when people have to keep those ugly philosophies in the closet, like you were saying, they have no outlet to express it and just get it out of their system, such as artwork, music, just something that all it is a creation, but it's something that can be easily turned off or looked away from. When they don't have those outlets, or they don't just have that ability to express themselves without being shamed, it does come out very strange. There's a lot of theories about certain alt-right guys that they started their groups because they're actually in the closet. There's people who weren't accepted somehow, so they had to, or they never had that ability to express their outlet because of wherever they grew up, or maybe their parents or their spouse or whatever. So they started a weird group.
Right, repression. Right, their the inability to express themselves fully. Yeah, I could see that all over the place. It's really gross. Human expression is mandatory to us blossoming as a species. In the fullest the fullest potential of a species. I can't see it any other way. But there is a lot of ugly ignorance out there, and it's just like, how the fuck do you nip that in the bud? And it can't be through love, because not everyone's going to be able to get love. It has to be through, I don't know. I wish I knew.
I think that a program, in a perfect world, I think that kind of like the Boys and Girls Club, but for young adults and possibly older adults, there should be some sort of service where people willing to volunteer their time, talk on the phone or become a pen pal, who are, willing to deprogram these people from their ignorance, help them have an intelligent conversation.
I love that idea. Or having mental health care. Counselors should be fucking like water almost at this point. People could use someone to talk to. That's exactly it. You know, going back...
I think that the silent generation even sort of left a nasty mark with that too. That's the generation, that's the last generation to not have psychology so at their fingertips before the baby boomers.
Who is that? Who is the silent generation?
The silent generation are the parents of the baby boomers. They're in between the greatest generation and the boomers. Think madmen, like people who were adults in the 60s.
Okay.
Drinking scotch at work and slapping asses, calling their son a pussy. I think of all these like stereotypes of like where the toxic masculinity comes from is actually this generation, I think.
I see.
And I think that generation still has left this very deep-seated prejudice and stigmatization of seeking psychological help for some people in our country. And I think some people see it as either weakness or they see it as, you know, you're a nut job or something like that for whatever reasons. And I think that our society needs to get past that for a lot of those people.
And you see, that's, yeah, I want to go back to the Christianity stuff and how it like it does serve the purpose of counseling at this point. In you know, like people feel better going there. You know, they're getting some...
The validation.
Yeah, well, they get some sort of counseling. They get some sort of, the validation. They get that. But I also feel like, boy, is that the service we want, or is it counseling? Is it science-based counseling? Not that, you know, and I have plenty of Christian friends, and I respect, you know, their lifestyle to a point, but it's just, you know, I also have a lot of issues with that, with religion. It just doesn't make any sense.
I think that another way that a lot of aggression gets manifested is how sex is sanitized in this culture. Not just by, you know, things post-Tipper Gore, but also, of course, religiously as well. We traditionally are a puritanical country, and I think that a lot of these views get really twisted up, and so you have a lot of repressed sexuality that turns into pedophilia. And you have these weird closet cults of, you know, sex cult, and people doing a lot of crazy harm to people who are completely innocent, all because this person was abused, and they pass on the abuse and, you know, further contaminate this lineage of abuse, basically.
I'm living this whole thing right now. It's hard to talk about. Yeah, that comes to Body Keeps the Score. You read Body Keeps the Score. It has a lot of brutal information about that situation, about repeating your cycle of violence over and over again. I've also read recently an article how the scent that's let off in times of stress, let's say you're victimized sexually as a child, the scents that are let off there are something that become addictive almost. And so you have to recreate that stress in order to recreate that moment.
So in recent years, have you been censored?
Oh, well, recently, in the recent months, just a couple months ago, people told me I was censored, and it's true, but I took it, I spent so many times, I just sort of laugh at it now. Like, it's awful that I've been censored and picked on so many times. I just sort of chuckle. I had an art show. It was a group art show, but I was given a 12 by 12 wall, and he said you could fill it with anything you want. And so I did. And I'm hanging these, and there's two big flags I hung at the top of the 12-foot wall. And they're big flags, and one says, please share, and in the middle there's a guillotine. And the other said, there were two people helping me hang them. One was Bob, this gentleman Bob, and one was a young lady named Ling Ling. And I asked Ling Ling, I said, why don't you pick one of my flags? She liked the flags, the concept of them. And she goes, I want to hang this one. It says, please quit jailing immigrants. And it has a guillotine in the middle of it. So she hangs that flag, and I hang the please share flag. And we all love the group of us. And there's about 5 or 6 artists in there. They all say they love my wall. They love the flags. Well, the owner of the gallery He's also curating, he also put together the show. He's the one who invited me and told me I had a 12-foot wall and I could hang anything. He came in that day, saw them, and told them they had to be pulled down. And I had to come in personally and take them down. And I was like, what the fuck? I got to come in there and take down my flag. So the day of the show, I came in, he's like, you got to take down the flags. And I just laughed, and I'm fine, no, because I don't want any grief. And I feel like a lot of times people are pushing me into a situation. He's known me, this guy's known me 30 years, so he knows a lot of times how I'll react. He's like, fuck you, I'll take everything out of here, and I'll cause a stink. I don't do that anymore. And so I took the flags down, and I laughed about it. And I said, so, Ed, off the record, I guess I'm lying to him because I'm on the record now. Off the record, I'm not really lying because he yelled it across the fucking place, dickhead. He goes, I go, off the record, Ed, tell me why you took them down. I'm thinking it's political. Somebody goes, because they sucked. They sucked. And he started yelling it across the place. And everyone there, it was a group of artists. They all liked it. They all liked it. They thought they were cool. They were really entertained by him. And they all looked, their jaws were, I looked over at them and I'm laughing and their jaws are on the ground. Couldn't believe this guy was being so mean to me. And he's getting off on being mean to me. And I'm laughing because I'm so used to this stuff. And we took the flags down. And then later his right-hand man, Bob, apologized. He's like, I haven't seen Ed like that ever. And one of the people that were there had said he hasn't seen Ed like that since the 90s. I equate it to professional jealousy, but censored nonetheless. It was weird.
It's interesting that of all things, he did that. It sounds like he's known you for a while too, which makes it a little odd as well.
Yeah, it was odd. I think the greatest example of being censored I have, that proof of, is when I was on the Queen Latifah show. And I was on there for a Dana Plato. This young lady died while I was on the phone with her, and I put a book out about it. And we got in a fight backstage. I wasn't going to go on because they tricked me and lied to me about the context of the show. But I go on the show, and it's outrageous. People are yelling at me from the audience. I'm yelling back. I get Queen Latifah to turn red. I mean, I bust her out right away. She says some shit, and I go, there's nothing different the only difference between me and you call me an exploiter, you say I'm exploiting this death, the only difference between me and you is that you're making $100,000 a commercial minute, and I'm making about $10 a commercial minute. That's the difference. You get rich off it. And so she says, stop the show. And she walks backstage. She's so angry because she couldn't answer me. She starts stuttering and walks off set. I'm like, fucking got her. And so later, I see the show on TV, and it's just like, every time I go to answer, I'm like, oh yeah, you mother beep, beep. The whole show is beeps. So they beep over everything about it, and that's when I learned the lesson. I seldom do pre-recorded stuff anymore. Even like this that we're doing now, I've insisted that I get the audio recordings after the show. I want them uploaded so I have the full audio, so in case I have to prove myself. I only do, in those kind of hot situations, it's got to be live. It's got to be like streaming or live radio, live TV, or I won't do it because I'm not going to get edited into being a schmuck, because the magic is in the edit.
Absolutely.
Or the censors, they could make it sound however they want when they get to start chopping things. And that's the dangerous part about censorship, is you start curating the conversation of humanity. You curate the conversation of our society. When you tell people they can't say something, you basically put these values that a few people are dictating what's being said, and their morals, not their values, there's a difference, I think, but they impose their morality on everyone based on what you can or can't say. And I don't know, I sort of like how the internet is, where the conversation's just all wild. And I see the modern, I see the internet as the modern Cthulhu. It's just ripping apart things left and right. You want your Cthulhu? It's the internet.
Man, that Cthulhu is a real mother. Shane, I really want to thank you for bringing up these kind of hard topics. Listeners, you heard our disclaimer earlier that discretion has been advised for this. However, your opinions are always welcome. It doesn't mean that we're going to listen to them. But if you would like to voice any agreement, distaste, strange stories about censorship, you can let us know at
speakofthedevilpod@gmail.com.
The magic is in the editing. Be careful what you say.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and tune into our next episode wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. You can find us at Speak of the Devil Pod on Twitter and contact us at speakofthedevilpod@gmail.com. For Shane's artwork or to support his endeavors, please visit shanebugby.com or find him on Twitter at ShaneBugby. I've been Nannerl. Have a good one.
Oh, and shaneisthedevil.com.